Good morning. I'm very pleased to come over here to see you. And although technology really can make us connected to each other 1,000 miles away, but nothing really compared to come over to really visit your country. And I want to first appreciate this opportunity to speak to you. And this is really quite a coincidence because when I received the email and about this possible connection with DTU, and I was actually ready to come to Copenhagen for an International Academy meeting. So actually, as we speak now, I'm having a meeting downtown. So it just, well, that's the virtual world, right? So I can be multiple places. And I also want to thank my colleague from KAIST. Actually, all this connection coming from KAIST because we have been working with KAIST in Daejeon, South Korea for 3 years now. And it was doing one of your visits to KAIST, and then you heard about the iPodia program, and then through Professor Jim Morrison, and all the things get connected. So the world is really a very small world, and I spent 6 months of my life on sabbatical at KAIST, and my wife actually, I brought my wife here too. So make sure that I say something that is really worthwhile. So, and she's a pianist actually. We just discovered that she has this very, very unusual common interest with our host here. They both own a Bosendorfer piano, and the probability of that is very, very small, believe me. So this is really a very fascinating visit for me, both professionally and personally. Now, we have 1 hour here to really imagine the future. But before we imagine the future together, I want to really give you a little bit overview of what is the current status of our profession. I want you to first remind yourself what has happened when 20 years ago we networked the students to our classroom. From that point on, students anywhere in the world, either at work, on the battleground, in different sites, they are able to receive lecture from teachers. Now, that was just a very simple idea, but it has triggered a lot of changes. Some of them are very fundamental change in how we educate students and how students learn. That was 20, 30 years ago. Now, I want you to, for the next hour, I want you to imagine what could happen if now we network all the classroom together globally. Now here, the network is between classrooms. So as students walk in this classroom, they are walking into a global world classroom, and they will be able to study with any global peers as their classmate. Now imagine that is the future. And I want to discuss with you that future in the next hour, and I want to show you some example that the future is happening today. It's actually happening now. And then I want to work with you to think about what could be the implication of this future in our profession. Now, I don't know about your specific academic background, and I know our host is a mathematician. I'm not a mathematician, I'm an engineer. I'm not an expert in education, not at all. As a matter of fact, in my first 25 years in career, as you know, as a professor in the United States, we do a lot of research there, and as a result, we really try to get away from teaching as much as we can. Until 5 years ago, I suddenly realized, hey, after all, I'm called teacher, right? So I have to really teach something. And so I started to really focusing on this area of learning and teaching, and it's really fascinating because my engineering expertise, I started as mechanics in mathematical modeling of the physical world. For many, many years, I've been very interested in design, the issue of how people become creative. The more I study design, like yesterday, I have to present a technical paper on design with all the design experts in the world. You know what? Honestly, if you really want to learn how to design, if you really want to teach smart designer, we have to change the way we teach in general. So really, whatever you do in design research, whatever research you do, if we do not really face the challenge of how to better educate our people, we're not going to get there. So I become very interested in study education. Now, because I'm an engineer, so when I study education, study learning, I take a different view from many of you, from many experts in education. So let me begin my presentation showing you a metaphor. I want you now for the moment to look around all these places around you here. You say, well, what's new about this? This is a campus. I want you to, for a moment, think about this as a factory. And the more you think about it, the more you'll be surprised it is a factory. It is nothing but a factory. Now, the reason I have that view is because I'm an engineer, right? So let me show you why this campus became a factory. Because somehow, from last century, we started to do a very major change on education, and we didn't even realize that. That is, we try to use the industrial standard. We try to industrialize our teaching and learning. If you want to create a factory, how do you do that? First, you want to produce product, you want to serve more, and you want to save more. So the factory becomes, we want to serve the many and save the money. Now, if you're the president of a university, if you want to serve the many and save the money, what do? You do a lot of things we do today, and that leading to a lot of problems in campus today. And let me show you what's the analogy here. So campus is a factory. Students are raw material. They come in here. Now, we are very fortunate that we have a quality control in the entrance, right? So we select a good student, only the one we want. And then our teacher, I mean, all of you actually are factory worker. I was a factory worker. Now, the reason we do that is because when I walk in there, teach a course, I'm basically doing a production. I have a production manual. I have a textbook. And I keep doing the same thing semester after semester. And the so-called curriculum in the factory is nothing but assembly manual, right? So for 4 years, the product has to be produced, and the product has to have a certain parts, and that's how we do. So that's why we have this curriculum committee to decide on assembly sequence and assembly manual. The examinations are quality control. And finally, we have degree. Now, degree today is nothing but a product. Okay? Now, the only difference here is when you are running a university and your customer, your student, pay your money first. And when you run a factory, you better produce good product because nobody will pay you if you produce bad product. Okay? Now, you can see because this revenue model is very different, and now you can see factory now become more and more efficient, and university become more and more inefficient. And I'm going to show you some of the reasons why. Now, this inefficiency went on for many decades, but it was okay because somehow society gave us a very nice protection. Now, education is good for the well-being of the country, for the people, right? So we try to put a lot of support into education. But if you really look at the inside of how we run the education business here, it is very inefficient. As a matter of fact, I don't know whether you've been following the trend of education in the United States. Many of the state universities in America, if you open their book, they're bankrupt. It's just they don't want to talk about it. They're bankrupt. And I'm going to show you the reason for that. Okay? Now, 2 reasons. One is if you look at the supply side of what we do, okay? One thing is about 30 years ago, suddenly the technology came to the classroom. Now everybody want to do digital course. Online courses, distance education, every university want to jump on the wagon. What happened there is not only now we can digitize our course, we can produce a lot of courses, and we can then give these courses, deliver these courses very far away to a lot of students. As a result of that, a lot of things we do on campus become what? Become a commodity. You know, the sad thing about commodity is the differentiation become very small. And price become the only thing that matters. So you have this University of Phoenix. I mean, it's a public traded company in the United States, and they are doing very well. They're doing very well because they really do these things as a business. Okay? Now, I want you to look at this historical progression of digital learning. Digital learning is not new. Actually, more than half century ago, we know how to do digital learning. We used to sit in front, well, maybe you're not old enough, but we used to sit in front of the radio, right? That was digital learning. And then we have a TV, look at the course on the TV. Then we have a satellite. I don't know whether this happened in Denmark. United States, for about 10 years, people actually use satellite to broadcast different courses. Now, these are all focused on broadcasting. Now we have this internet. That's a major, major hit. So everybody can get online. And now, not only you can get online in front of your computer, you can do learning on mobile phone. I mean, every time I look at people offer courses on mobile phone, I say, what is happening here? I mean, are you really learning on a mobile phone? And there's a lot of courses on mobile phone now. You can do mobile learning, okay? So all these things sounds very good. What is happening now is the supply gets more and more. Students have more opportunity to learn, and learning becomes cheaper and cheaper. If you are only interested to learn the content, I'm going to differentiate the learning in terms of content learning and context learning. I'm going to explain to you that later. So this comes to the next major thing. Now you know what? Everything is in the cloud. They call it big data, right? So all the things now put in the cloud. So eventually, all the textbook, all the things we do here is in the cloud. Okay? As long as you can get into the cloud, you can learn. Now, if you look at this half-century progression, and you will see the speed of delivery of course, the distance of delivery of course, and the scale of delivery, how many people we can deliver to, it really increased exponentially. To the extent now there's no limit. Everyone can do that, okay? So two things happen. In the 90s, you have this internet revolution, and now there's a big thing called MOOC. Have you heard of MOOC? Okay, everybody heard of MOOC, right? Have you ever wondered what's going to happen to us after the whole world is MOOCed out? Have you heard the word MOOCed out? Everybody's MOOCed. Make you wonder what we're going to do after the world is MOOCed out, right? This is really something I think we as a participant of this education profession should really be very careful. Now, I often tell my colleague, what is happening in university business today is exactly what's happening 30 years ago in internet business. If you live long enough, 30 years later, you will look back and look at, wow, how come I didn't see it? This is really happening, okay? So what is happening is we have more supply, we have a cheaper supply, but you know what? We try to focus on same demand. The demand is to learn the content of a subject. So if you want to study any content today, you can get online, you can study that. A lot of time you find that you walk in here, you give lecture, a student looking back there and typing Wikipedia, try to check what are you telling them. And they're getting better information back there, right? And then you're still here and try to really give a lecture. What is the point of this? And then these things go on and go on and go on, okay? So I want you to now look at demand side. Okay, so supply is really more, right? So if demand is more, that's fine. Everybody will be happy, right? Supply-demand relationship is always what we live on. But if you look at the demand, it's actually very worrisome. This chart is a plot over the past 30 years of the price increase of college tuition, which is the line here, the medical care, which is the second line, the housing, this is the United States data, okay? The housing is here, you see the housing bubble, and then the consumer price index, the average consumer price index, over the past 40 years, over the past 30 years. What do you see? What do you see? If you are a factory offer such kind of product, I tell you, you're going to out of business a long time ago. And yet we sustain. But you know what? Not anymore. Not anymore, okay? So what is happening now is you see this major increase of tuition, and then you find out these things only get worse because it gets into a vicious cycle. Here's the cycle. So we have economic recession. Everyone is suffering. When government is suffering, the first thing they're going to cut is education budget, right? So they're going to cut education funding. So less money comes to university, and universities still increase the tuition, right? College tuition still go up. You can tell from here. Now, where does this gap come from? In the United States, I don't know about your country. In the United States, this is coming from something called student loan. Do you have a student loan here? Okay, in the United States, there's something called American Dream. You know what is American Dream? American Dream means everyone should have a home, every kid should have a college degree. That's American Dream, right? Okay, so you already know what happened to the first dream, that everybody has a home. Now we have the housing bubble, right? The same bubble is happening in education now. What is happening is students with the expectation to come to school And once they get a degree, they're going to get a good job to pay back the investment, right? Therefore, no matter how much the tuition raise, they will get into student loan. And student loans backed up by the government. Because American dream, right? So they end up graduate 4 years degree with a huge loan. You know what? By the time they get a piece of paper, a degree from us, they find that they are not able to find a job because of recession. So now you have a graduate, young people, come out of school with a huge debt and no way to pay back. You know what? The default rate of student loan in the United States is about 2.6 times higher than the default rate of housing loan. And you don't see that report on news because people really don't know how to talk about it. The student loan default rate is 2.6 times higher than housing default rate. Now, if your house is underwater, okay? We know the house is underwater, right? What do? You walk out, you give the house to the bank, right? Imagine what happened if your degree is underwater. You're going to walk back to university, give us the diploma? No, it was nothing. It was nothing. It doesn't even have a piece of land. That is why the whole society now is banking on this very bad investment, and we're really in trouble. Okay? So you look at this, the personal debts, job opportunity decrease, personal debts increase. Now I want you to go to the website, look at this book. This is not a book. It's only 30 pages. It's an article. Now this article is very popular called Education Bubble. It's a fascinating article. Try to compare how we end up housing bubble, which everybody can verify with history, it's already happened, and then try to compare exactly we are doing the same thing in education. It's called Education Bubble, and you should go there to look at these things. Now, once you see this bubble, you'll find out, wow, this is really terrible. Bubble is going to burst. And as we know, when the bubble in education bursts, you have no collateral. You have nothing. Okay? And then you have the 1 or 2 generation young people get stuck into these things. It's very hard to recover. So this is really what happening to education as an enterprise. Now, before 2000, if you look at the demand curve and the supply curve, education was certainly looking very good. It was an under-supply market before 2000. In other words, you have increasing demand very fast. The economy developed very fast, the bubble was growing, and the demand was a little bit, the supply was slow. At that moment, I don't know about in Denmark, in many Asian countries, many rich people started to open universities because that was the best business to do. It's under-supply market. Now, if everything went well in the past 10 years, the business should be good, right? If you look at the projection. And the gap became bigger, and the profit, the business opportunity become better, right? But you know what? Unfortunately, the history didn't happen that way. What happened is, number one is the demand gets suppressed, right? The job is lost. We lose a lot of jobs. The economic recession. So the demand gets depressed. Supply gets increased. Keep increasing. That's really surprising because if you're running a factory, if the demand is depressed, you're going to slow down, right? We don't care. We keep producing all these digital courses, and we keep competing on who graduate more students there, and we keep issuing these degrees, all different things. You know what? What is happening now is we are facing this turning point. The whole supply-demand in education now is turning upside down. And you have this one. You have oversupply market. That is really what's happening now. That is really what's happening now. Now, if you look at the oversupply market, if you continue to do what you do, there's no other way. You're going to go bankrupt. Because the more you do it, the more money you're going to lose, right? That's why economists don't even study this. This doesn't make sense. Nobody's in the business of losing money. You say, no, you're talking too pessimistic. I mean, students come over here, take courses, really enjoy courses. Come on. If they really want to enjoy courses, there's a lot of free courses. Many universities brag about, oh, we have a Nobel Prize winner give courses, right? I tell you this. If you want to really listen to good Nobel Prize lecture, go to online. A lot of them online. You say, oh, no, they don't come to courses. They want to get a degree so they can get a job. But let me tell you, as we said here, degrees are underwater. So courses are free. Degrees are underwater. How are you going to sustain? You really have to now look at the fundamental. Now, at the end, I'm going to conclude this lecture to saying there's no point to keep rearranging the deck chair on a sinking ship. I want you to now start thinking about that. I'm not saying you should not go to the curriculum committee meeting, okay? You should still go to curriculum committee meeting. But what I'm telling you is the crisis we're facing here will not be solved by your new curriculum, okay? I tell you. It will not be solved if you change a course from 2 units to 3 units. And yet we're spending our days and nights doing that. Okay, so let's look at how we're going to deal with this. I'm not saying you should jump the ship, okay? It's still too early to jump the ship. But let's try to really come down to look at what are all these challenges we're facing, which are very fundamental. And I tell you, university business is a business that has not changed over 300, 400 years. Never such business exists in the human history. But it's going to change. And it's going to change right now. So I really want to encourage everyone here to look at all the challenges as an opportunity. So the higher education reaches strategic inflection point. That is the point where supply and demand overshoots each other, right? So what happened is you see individual change. People learning are really different now. I don't know about you. In the United States, all the kids have these mobile devices and text message each other. Sometimes when I ask students to send me a study report, and their report just reads like a series of tweets. Does it happen to you? They don't even know how to write a complete paragraph. They just tweet. And you counted every tweet is 144 words. Okay? And then you walk in classroom, they're sitting back there, and people always joke about the distance education started from row number 5. That's distance education. That's distance education. Okay? So you look at this, and yet we keep doing that every day. And you have to really realize that individuals are different. People are really different. And today, if you come over here, lock the kids in for 3 hours, and lecture them about the information, the content, the definition, they will be better off do Wikipedia, do Google. They don't really need you. Okay? Institution is changing. As we said, the university now is facing a historical crisis. We cannot continue the way we want it. The system, whole higher education system is changing. You can tell it's changing, okay? And the society is changing, okay? So at this point, I want to introduce some opportunity. So after I scare you with all the crisis, now I want to show you some opportunity. But in order to look at this opportunity, you have to look at it in a very fundamental way. You have to completely change what you believed yesterday. Now, if you read a book by Andrew Grove, he's the founder of Intel, and he has a very well-known definition of strategic inflection point. He said, in business, if you're passing a strategic inflection point, at that point, nothing short of fundamental will do. Don't even bother to rearrange that chair. Nothing short of fundamental will do. Now, Einstein is smart, right? Einstein said you cannot solve a problem with the same mindset that created a problem. You know what? Many of the problems we solve here today is because we created yesterday. You have to really change that. Now, by the way, when I started to look at education, I started to read some of the early Einstein's work. I was very fascinated. This guy really knows about education. One paper, he said, what is education? He said, education is after you graduate from school, and you forget about everything you learn in the classroom, what is left is education. So, wow, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. So after you finish the school, you forget everything you learn in the classroom, what is left is education. Are we doing that? We're not. We have to really change the way we do this, okay? So now, let me turn into some hope. Let me show you a radical innovation in learning, okay? Now, if you want to look at learning education now, you have to look at learning in a big system. You have to look at education in the context of technology, which you don't have to do last century. You also have to look at education in the context of globalization. That's a fact of life. So when you now want to plan a new model of learning, you have to look at all these three things together. You cannot do it like last century, you just do learning. And let me show you now, all these three things has already arrived at a turning point. And that is a great challenge. That is also a great hope. First, education. MOOC, right? Everybody's MOOCed. And all the presidents want to jump on the MOOC wagon. So it doesn't matter what you do. As long as there's a computer involved, it's MOOCed. So every university is MOOCed. Now, you have to ask yourself, if the whole curriculum is MOOCed, what would be the value proposition for our campus education? Why would students still pay tuition? I don't know how much they pay here. In my university at USC, students pay $60,000 US per year. $60,000 US per year. Why would they do that? Why would they do that? They can MOOC at home, right? Why would they do that?
Did you say 60 or 60?
60 US dollar.
Including board and food?
No, no. Board and food is on your own. Okay? And by the way, we're not the most expensive one, okay? We're expensive, not the most expensive one. The state university, about half of the price, $30,000 to $35,000. Okay? Well, there's a lot of discussion about university costs. That's a separate subject, okay? And today, one of the reasons in United States campus we get this high tuition is because the market competition. Every university wants to have the best restaurant, believe me. Every university wants to have the best modern gymnasium, stadium, big football game. That's how it happened. Okay, but let's beyond the point. That's for university president to worry. Okay, question? Okay, so I want you to now think about it. Why would students pay us? Okay, that's the first question. The second one is technology. You don't even need to talk about technology today in learning because everyone knows technology is here. But you know what? Most of technology today are used to maximize the delivery distance. We talk about delivery, right? We talk about delivery distance because it used to fit into our model of having more coursework, more degree. We can reach to more students. But I want you to turn your thinking to the other way. I want you to ask, can we also use technology to eliminate the distance of learning? Now, here I'm going to introduce you a new approach. Rather than distance education, I'm going to do no distance education. In other words, I'm not going to use the technology to enlarge my delivery distance. I'm going to use technology to eliminate the distance between learner, which I call no distance education. I'm going to show you how do you do that. Next one, globalization. Again, every university wants globalization, right? We have a dean in charge of globalization. Every university has that. But you know what? No matter how we do globalization today, we travel, we do overseas study, we do exchange program, they're all the privilege of the few. Can we do globalization so that it becomes the right of the many? I'm going to show briefly what's the problem with the current way of doing globalization. I'm not saying that's really the one we need to replace, but we need to complement that. I want to make sure that students can receive global experience right on campus. Can we deliver global education locally? You say, are you crazy? That's what we're going to do. To complement all the other global programs, okay? So I want you to remember all these three challenges, and now I want to introduce a program called iPodia. And iPodia is the answer to this challenge. So let me begin by showing you the iPodia Pedagogy Foundation. Now, by the way, iPodia stands for I plus Podia. Podia is the pearl of podium. Earlier, we have trouble with Apple computer because Apple thinks this is iPod plus idea. And it's not, okay? I want to show you what this I means because I capture the pedagogical foundation. First I. First belief is we believe context is as important as content. Okay? You say, what heck you talk about? What is context? What is content? Okay, there's a long discussion on this. I just want to simply ask you, is there a July 4th in Denmark? Is there a July 4th in Denmark?
Yes, there is. Yes. But not with so many fireworks.
So if I give a lecture in China, I would say, is there a July 4th in China? You know what? You have to then figure out, am I asking you the content or the context, right? If I'm asking you the content, certainly there's a calendar July 4th in China, right? But if I'm asking you the context, you will say, yes, there's a July 4th in China, however, it is October 1st. You say, what? What is the date here in Denmark? What's your national holiday?
June 5th.
June 5th. Okay? So you will say, yes, there's a July 4th in Denmark, however, it is June 5th. Now you see the difference between context and content? Okay? Unless you know the context, the content will not make a lot of sense. You know, that is why I'm so worried about this tweeting all over the world. Every time you tweet 144 words, it's only the content, right? And if I tweet something to you, I'm assuming you understand my context, right? Otherwise, you will react very differently, right? That's why now you see, if we don't really build a context understanding at school and have kids go out tweeting each other all over the world becomes very unstable. You see what I'm saying? It's very worrisome. The world gets very unstable. The stability will come from our shared contextual understanding. So when I send you some message, when I ask you a question, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Got it? So context is very important. To do context learning, we adapt a model called inverted learning. I'm going to introduce you the flipped classroom idea. Okay, flipped classroom, many people use it. I'm going to share with you how we do it differently. So the second belief we have is we believe what you learn depends on with whom you learn. This is very different from the past. In the past, we believe what you learn depends on from whom you learn. No. We believe it's very important you have a good learning peers. Because context cannot be lectured. I cannot lecture you the context. You say, well, if I cannot lecture context, what I do? I can engage, I can interact with other people to develop context. That's why you want to travel around the world, right? So content can be lectured. Context has to be developed by engagement, by interaction. So what we do is we do interactive learning. And I'm going to explain to you how do we do that. There's many people work on interactive learning, but we do it differently. And we call no-distance interaction. So we can interact with each other, share contextual understanding and differences across the boundary. The physical boundary, the cultural boundary, and the institutional boundary. Last one. We believe diversity increases everyone's learning opportunity. Therefore, if you have a chance to learn with people who are so different from you, you learn more. That's why if I have all my students coming from the city of Los Angeles, they pretty much grow up the same way, they learn the same thing. But if I'm able to put students from Denmark and students from China, students from KAIST, students from USC learning together, suddenly the difference of their life experience become an education resource. That resource is so valuable. It's not something can be described in a textbook. It's not something you can put in the cloud. Diversity is a beautiful source of learning if you're able to do that. So what we do is we want to cross the border, we want to do international learning. And not only that, we want to do international learning locally. Because I want to make sure every student do international learning as part of their learning. You don't even need to talk about this as a special thing. It's part of the regular thing. Okay? So let's look at the inverted learning. Now, anybody heard of inverted learning flipped classroom? Okay, so let me just quickly go through this, okay? Content. Okay, traditional learning. Traditional learning means that You come to the lecture, do schoolwork, you listen lecture. Then you go home, you work on exercise. So you have a schoolwork, which is lecture, and homework, which is exercise. What do you want to do exercise for? Do case study, do discussion, do group project, right? So in traditional learning, you first receive the lecture to understand the content. Then you go home to exercise the problem to develop contextual understanding, right? Now, what people do is called flipped, called inverted learning flipped. Flip means what? Flip means that before you come to the classroom, I want you to study all the content lecture at home. Why? Because it's all in the cloud. As long as you have internet access, you should be able to watch all my lecture at home. So you will do homework before. And when you come to the classroom, I assume everyone sitting here have already learned the content. Therefore, I can spend all my lecture time to devote to contextual interaction. Now imagine now you are interact not only with your people here, but with people on the video wall over the world. Okay? However, the way we do it is slightly different. Not only we invert the class, we also want the students around the world to give us the feedback before the lecture so that we, teacher, can better prepare the exercise. Because every group of students have a different contextual needs, right? So you really cannot get all the context ready before students read the content and tell you what's the problem. Let me show you an example, okay? This example, so the inverted process, you do the homework first, okay? So in teaching an iPodia class, 48 hours before, I have to put all my lecture slides, videos online, 48 hours before. And starting from that point, students will log on to look at my slides and video. And by the way, I will also give them a link, all the MOOC course. They're free, right? So the more MOOC, the better for this. There are a lot of material. I give them all the material. Now, I want them 24 hours. I want them to give me feedback. Sorry? 24 hours, I want them to give me the feedback. Now, the way we do it is we implement the feedback as a pen index. OK, let me give you one example. Suppose this lecture, I want to introduce 5 concepts, A, B, C, D, E. I give them 26 slides and a video. Every student look at each slide will have to tell me, do they feel very painful, very hard, or very easy? Now, it's interesting that whenever they say, OK, this is very easy, they hit return. Immediately on the side, it pop out a screen say, OK, you may be able to help Mary in Germany. Got it? Hey, this is not hard to do, very easy to do. If they say, wow, this is really hard, I don't know what heck you're talking about, you say, very hard. They immediately pop out and say, hey, John in Los Angeles may be able to help you. Got it? So 24 hours before, you have already put all the learner into a network of supply-demand among themselves. Then, by about 12 hours before, I, as a teacher, I will look at the aggregate result. And I can tell from this aggregate result that I need to focusing on slide number 12, 15, 17, because they are most painful slide, right? So I can tell I need to really spend the next 3 hours in the classroom, make sure students understand concept B and concept C. I will not waste time for concept A and concept D and concept E. Now you see this is very powerful now, because students actually tell me what they need to learn. And it's very interesting now because we have students around the world, globally. You find out the German students, Jewish students, American students, they all have different pen. The pen index is very different. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Because suddenly you can see the difference of culture in terms of contextual understanding. OK? So then you start to prepare the schoolwork, and you start to do exercise, you do team project. OK, so now you have understand how you prepare before you come to the class. So now I want to show you what happened in the class. Now, because of time, I want to really move this. I want to show you how do you interact. Okay, so now imagine you already finished the reading. You already talked to Mary and John, and you already tell the teacher what's the difficulty you have, and you walk into class. Okay, so now our class is a modified version of this kind of class. We have a big screen in the middle. We have a video wall in the front. Then we have a 2 big screen video in the side. Now, each of these video will show the live scene of a remote classroom. Okay, so now if you sit over here, you can say hi to someone in Germany, audio, video, online, synchronized. So the difference is we now need to put more camera in the front than in the back. Now, in the traditional distance education classroom, we just need a camera back there shooting my talking head, right? That's the only thing matters. But now, see, what you talk about matters. So we have a camera shooting you. And now, because I'm the teacher, I'm standing here, all the students will be behind me and in front of me, right? So we have a 2 image projection screen in the back there, so I can see the image back there. That's it. So with about $500 to $1,000 US addition, we convert all the distance education classroom to this. Become no distance interaction. So I'll be standing here. I'll look at my student in Los Angeles. Then I will look at a stream of students, live students from KAIST. Everybody sitting there. And I'll look at a stream of students from Beijing, from Aachen, Germany, from Haifa in Technion, and they are all in one room. So someone raised a question here, and someone there can answer. And then the question can put into over there, and the questions start to go around. Now, the main difference here, yes? Okay. We now have a teaching team. Every session, there's a chief professor. Every faculty sitting back there taking different responsibility. Say, for example, I will be responsible for reviewing the lecture, and German professor will be responsible for team project. And KAIST professor will be responsible for case study. And every week we rotate. Now, that's a very interesting thing because it turns out that put a lot of competition among professors. That is a side effect I didn't realize. And I tell you, I really prepare very hard when I need to speak in front of my German colleague. Now, previously, I really don't care, right? If I'm the lousiest math professor at USC, what are you going to do? You cannot take courses from UCLA, even it's right across the street. You cannot do that. But now, you see, if you teach something, you have to be the best. And students really can see difference. For example, the complements between American professor and German professor are very interesting because German professors, they hardly give lectures. They do a lot of projects, right? And the German student was very impressed that we American professors, we really lecture to death. We lectures, okay? And they learn a lot. They said, wow, this is great. I mean, our professor never done that. In the meantime, my American students was very interesting about the German professor, the way they did team project, because they hardly give you any specification. American kids, you need to give them all the detail, right? German project, no such thing. Okay, you go to find out. At the beginning, they really complain. Okay, so professors are mostly senior professors. They don't care about teaching evaluation. Okay, well, that's a joke. So at the beginning, they complain, but I tell you, at the end, they really learn more. And professors learn more. Okay, so let me continue how we interact, okay? So you now imagine you have a 3 classroom, okay? These 3 classrooms are linked together with audio video wall. In other words, you're sitting in here, you can see the student from KAIST. Okay, and later on we can talk about the time difference, but it's not a big deal, let me tell you, because students really like the class in the midnight, believe me. They like it. Nobody go to bed at midnight. There's no reason you cannot have a class schedule at 1 a.m. You said, no, come on, believe me. Kids like midnight class, okay? So time difference is not a big deal. Now, calendar difference is another story. We can talk about how to overcome that difficulty. But again, all these calendar difference, time differences are because our thinking in the past, right? In the global world, it doesn't have to be that way. If you work at a global IBM company, can you say, call me tomorrow when I wake up? Cannot do that. The student need to really get used to that. Campus in the future ought to be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And particularly if you work with Technion Jewish students there, they have a Friday holiday, they have a Saturday holiday. So if you follow every campus holiday, you have no class. But again, that's so last century, okay? This century, you work, okay? So this really gives you a lot of thinking to look at what's being owed. Really, you have to throw that away, okay? Now, let me come back here. Suppose you have 20 students in this room, okay? 20 students in this room. So total, you have 60 students, suppose. Now, remember, we want to have a peer-to-peer interaction, right? So it's not just me talking to student. I want a student talk to student. So you have 60 people. It's useful to talk to each other, but it's rather hard. So what we do is we have group-to-group interaction. We also build small team all the way from beginning of the class. So you see, the student Technion will be divided into color. So as a matter of fact, their classroom, they have a different color table. So you two are the red team, and you will be in the same. You will be in the same team with 2 USC students sitting in the corresponding corner. So student, this is different from your distance education you take home. You have to come to class. Not only every week you have to come to class, you have to come to class sitting exactly the same desk. Otherwise, people don't see you, right? You have to sit there, okay? So you have the red team, you have the blue team. Everybody has a team member. So now you have 6 people, right? And what we do is before you walk in classroom, we give you all this chat room. Everybody log in the chat room. Audio, video chat, right? So now imagine when the interaction begins, we have a multiple level interaction. You're sitting here, you can wave hand to someone there. You can also text message to them. So you are one of the 60. In the meantime, you're one of the 6. You understand what I'm saying? So a lot of time you'll find out students really can start to exchange. You say, well, is this become too distracting to students? Don't worry about it. If they don't do this, they're going to search the internet buying something anyway. They are very good in multitasking, okay? I tell you. Don't worry about it. They are very good in this. And students will just do multitasking. So as you start to ask questions, you find out they already start talking to each other. And then their answer come out to be very integrated answer. Okay? This is really the way of learning. This is why students still pay us $60,000 to come to campus to learn. Other than that, there's no reason to pay you. And we better get ready for that. Okay? And certainly everybody look on Blackboard so we can interact all this. Okay? Now, international learning, again, I'm really over time, so I want to skip this one. I want to show you now, I started this idea 5 years ago. And one step after the other, it is hard. At the very beginning, I thought technology was hard. No, not at all. Technology is not a problem. And I thought English was hard. No, not at all. Students in China, they speak perfect English. You know what's hard? You know what's the hardest thing? The university administration, the bureaucracy. It is really hard, okay? In Beijing, I have to speak to the president in order for their classroom to be open after 7. Okay, anyway, we've done all this, okay? So now we have a consortium around the world. Now, what do you mean by consortium? That you as an institution, you join this group. When you join this group, your president sign the agreement and take care of all this detail. For example, every student take course here with credit. Otherwise, you negotiate credit every course. It's a nightmare. Okay? I'm going to show you some operating principle. Let me show you first USC. We have Aachen. We have a Technion. And we have Peking University, the best one in China. And we have the best one in South Korea, KAIST. And we have the best one in Taiwan. And we have the best one in India, IIT, Mumbai. And we these first 7, the 7 again, they are the executive member. So now they review the new member coming in, okay? And we have 2 new members. And we just recently added a member from South America. And we're also negotiating some member from Middle East and also from Africa. Now you can tell the reason we do that is because we want to maximize the diversity. We don't want to have Harvard, MIT next to each other. Well, nothing against them, but they are too similar. We want to have a diversity. You say, how can my student in Los Angeles learn something from student in Africa? Hey, wait a minute. They really learn a lot from student in Africa. Okay? In terms of content, maybe not much. But now here you learn context. Right? So we're doing all these things globally. Right now, we're discovering very interesting opportunity we call education diplomacy. So right now, we are in contact and try to bring in a university from North Korea. Now, imagine we have a Kai student in here, North Korea student there. What kind of world we are? Now, what could be the worst? They cannot hit each other, right? They can just argue with each other. Okay? We are about to sign a contract with Sharaf University in Iran. Okay? Now, imagine this will be the world in the future. Okay? So let me tell you the operating principle of the consortium. The number one is equal participation. That if I offer a course, everybody take, then if you take 3 courses, you should offer 3 courses. That's it. Therefore, now we're looking mostly at a peer institution because we have to have an equal contribution. The second principle is very important. No money exchange. I work at university for 30 years. I know if you start to talk about money exchange between universities, that's the end of discussion. It never happened. So what happened now is we have university students pay their own tuition. So students in China, they pay their own tuition. Students in the United States pay their own tuition. Everybody take their own thing. You want to build a classroom, it's your problem. You build it. No money exchange. The next one is called no joint degree. That's another killer. If I sit down and talk about joint degree with you, my degree is always better than yours. It never ends. We don't want to talk about that. We only talk about joint courses. Now, imagine that in the future, all the courses are joined. What's the difference of degree? No difference. Don't rush. Let's talk about joint courses. Okay? So those are the operating principles. Now, I have a short video. Maybe I will show that later because I really don't want to delay your schedule here. Is that okay? Or you want to see the video? The video is just a video, okay? Since we already put the video together. Okay, the video really shows 3 classrooms, how they interact between Los Angeles, between Beijing, and between Taiwan, okay? Now, the difference of this kind of classes, when a student raises a question, you as a teacher, you don't want to answer. Because if you answer a question, that's the end of discussion, right? You don't want to do that. I mean, which is very hard, okay? And you need to learn when there's a question, don't answer. Then what do? You kick it to another place. You kick the question around. And eventually the answer come out. So it takes you some time to get used to it, but this is how you do it. Yeah.
Trying to ask this question again. Would you rather watch the video or have time for questions?
Yes, yes. Yes. Hey, by the way, the video you want to see, you can see YouTube. Now in YouTube, you type iPodia, you see a lot of it. You want to see video or you want to see the question?
Question.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. So okay. So let me conclude this, then we can open for questions. Okay. So now everybody is doing MOOC, right? But you know what? MOOC really enables students to study the content knowledge at home, anywhere, free. So what MOOC does is MOOC moves the content from the classroom to the cloud. Now you need to wonder, after the content's been moved from classroom to the cloud, what happened to the classroom? What happened? And this is where the iPodia come out. iPodia moved the context from the cloud back to the classroom. So now we can interact, can learn context, okay? So this is iPodia, and I already talked about education diplomacy, okay? And our belief is learning together for a better world. I believe if our next generation can all become classmates to each other, all the politicians will lose their job. I believe so. Because become classmates is really very valuable. Okay? Now, here's my conclusion. The higher education now is going through a major turning point, historical turning point. No point to rearrange that chair. You have to look at fundamental change. Okay? It's awfully hard to change education. It's a huge ship, has been running for centuries. But now, finally, the ivory tower is collapsing. Okay? And if you want to make big change, start with small step. I'm sure there's a lot of changes. What you have seen here today is just a small step, and we're taking a small step, and I welcome your participation. Okay? So, I worked very hard for this for 5 years. My wife knows every night I went to bed, I fall asleep right away. Why? Because I know I'm doing the right thing. Every morning I wake up, I get so busy. You know why? Because I know I have not done it right. That's what keeps my life going. Thank you. Questions? Questions? Remember, though, you ask questions, I don't answer, okay?
Thank you for this wonderful lecture. Okay. You really gave us a lot to think about and a lot to digest also. So I think we should take some questions now, and after that we can take some more questions at the standing lunch.
Sure.
But let's take some questions now already.
Yes, please.
So my question is, so your courses are at university level. Do you know of similar initiatives that are doing the same for high school level?
Very, very interesting question. You know what? Ideally, this kind of global contextual learning should happen as young as possible. There are now venture investors talking about putting this model for global kindergarten. Now, think about it. That's really powerful, right? That's really powerful, right? You send your kids to play in the kindergarten classroom. They play with the kids from other country. That's powerful. But I'm a university professor, so I only do a university. Other questions? Yes?
There's one word which worried me a little bit about your content lectures. You said that you assume the students to read all the materials before or at the 48 hours before. What is your experience with, I mean, do the students actually do this? Or?
Very good point. One of the reasons that MOOC is not doing well is MOOC has a wrong assumption that every learner is motivated, right? We know it's not, right? So what we do is we have a very complete monitoring system on the web. We know exactly which slide you went through, how long you spend each slide, and if you don't hit that button for the pay index, and we will not let you move to the next slide. And also, we have the quiz at the end. The quiz is not hard. It simply makes sure you read it rather than just keep returning so everything's easy. So yes, we do have that. Now, a more serious question is not just about the quality assurance of before the class. You have to have a quality assurance. The important thing is how do you do the learning assessment after the class? How do you really learn, right? And that is something we are now currently working with a group of education researchers doing very formal learning assessment. We have not done formal learning assessment. We have done informal for student evaluation, and students like it. But so far, we have not done formal one. That's a more serious question. Do you really learn you have achieved your learning outcome? Okay. Now, one of the things we learn is you have to change students' incentive structure. So for this kind of course, we always have 10 to 20% of the score reserved for the final mutual evaluation. We ask students from whom you learn the most in this semester. Ask them to rank. Then we give the student the highest rank, the highest score. You know what? They really try to help each other. Imagine you have a group of Chinese students sitting there. They really try to kill each other if you don't change the incentive structure, right? Because they have a curve and all these things. No. Here we want to encourage you to help each other to learn. So we actually evaluate that. So it's very interesting. When I first started this idea, so what's the big deal? Then I find out really it requires a lot of rethinking of almost everything we do. If you look at the way we evaluate students today, it is discouraging for them to learn anything else, right? We need to change that. Questions? Yes?
One thing is this impressive setup with the video screens. What happens when they interact in other ways? Facebook, Dropbox, so on. How much of it goes on there?
Yes, yes. We have 3 hours per course, 3 hours in the video room, but we want everyone logging to Facebook and all this kind of facility provided by our Blackboard system. So everyone's in the Blackboard system. So all the lecture content is all managed in central. So we have Blackboard system in the back. We have all the social networking because we want to make sure, particularly as 6 students in one group, they are connected 24 hours, 24/7. So a lot of technology goes behind it. I'm only showing you like 3 hours a week when they really see each other. Now, by the way, at the end of the course, depends on the course requirement, we often give students some incentive to travel, so they will see each other at the end. Like 3 months ago, we spent 2 weeks in Daejeon in all the students, 120 students, 20 German students, 20 Israeli students, 20 Korean students, 20 Chinese students, and 40 American students all get together for 2 weeks. But it's very interesting, by the time they see each other at the airport, they already know each other for whole semester. And you can quickly get together to do the final project. Questions? Yes?
You talked about life learning as a way of distance and putting people together. Have you ever tried this system on like multidisciplinary courses where you put students with different disciplines into the same context?
Good. There are a lot of effort focusing on multidisciplinary education. It is not our effort. We focus on multicultural education. It is not saying multidiscipline is not important. It is important, okay? But here we already assume it's multidiscipline. Say, for example, the course I'm offering here called Global Innovation Principle for Product Development. We have students in history. We have students in economics. We have students in engineering. And it's very interesting. Most German students are from engineering, and American students from business school. So we have all this. This course, so far, we offer to the whole university. It's not per department. Now, since you asked this question, let me also comment on what are the good subjects for this kind of thing. By the way, you do not want to use this to teach calculus. Got it? You don't want to use this to teach calculus, right? So what's good about this is if you want to really make sure students can fully understand the contextual background of how to use this knowledge, that's what you want to use that. Therefore, in engineering, say for example, a lot of social technical subject. Let me give you one example. We now have a course on megacity. Megacity is a technical problem? Not really. A lot of social problem, a lot of technical problem. But I tell you, the megacity challenge in Los Angeles and the megacity challenge in Brazil, in China, in Seoul are very different. The student work on megacity problem. Now, once again, we also have a course on computer security. You say, wow, what about some computer security? It's very interesting. Turns out the hackers around the world, they hack computer differently. See, they think differently, right? So they hack computer differently. So if you have a course on computer security, you put a student in different country together, it's interesting. They hack the computer differently. They start to help each other. Yes, please, sorry. Yes?
About calculus surprises me a little bit. I mean, your comments about calculus, why wouldn't you teach calculus? Well, I mean, there's a problem of scale, of course, typically for most universities, but I mean, you have the same context type thing you would actually improve your understanding and so on in that field also.
Okay, let me take it back. I don't think, I'm not saying you should not teach mathematics. This is my philosophy. I think a lot of time we really teach the wrong thing. Say, if I teach mathematics, unless really you want to become a mathematician, I should really teach you mathematical thinking rather than mathematics. So if I teach mathematical thinking, yes. But if I only teach mathematics, that's different. So for example, in this course, we don't teach engineering design. We teach design thinking. Do you see that? We don't teach physics, but we teach physical thinking. I really think this is another thing we need to be careful. A lot of times when we teach mathematics, we teach mathematics. No. What you really need to teach students, for most students, are the way to think like a mathematician. Then this contextual understanding, solving the problem, become important. You want to make sure student get contextual understanding out, any subject. Yes?
I think that's extremely interesting, and I also like your idea about the pain index and matching up students. Extremely nice, and I'm seeing, I just see it remove myself. And one thing I noticed was that I should not go in and answer the questions. I should step back.
Oh, yes.
Someone would tell them already that's working out.
But it's very hard. We always try to jump and answer the question.
But about the context and the mathematical thinking versus calculus discussion, I think I'm with there. So the idea is to teach them how to solve problems, but not the actual recipe or technical details of how to bring it. And in that context, actually, what is the role of textbooks in all of this? Because this seems to imply that you're not actually running by one single textbook where they learn the rules of calculus. Instead, you are sort of encouraging them to help each other to find stuff. So what are your thoughts on that?
You know what? I don't know the answer to that. Okay. The reason is we are sort of doing an experiment now. All the chips are falling. Exactly where it landed, I don't know. Seriously, I don't know what's the role of textbook. But so far, the 4 courses we offer, we don't require textbook. Or each university will require their own textbook. Because you don't want to come over here and repeat the textbook. So I don't know the answer.
But this was my experience also. I noticed I could actually give my without textbook.
Yeah, you'll find out more. So that's why if I'm a textbook publisher, I will really get worried. Seriously. I'll really get worried. Yeah. Because you see, everything you want to do in textbook, if you spend a couple of minutes to Google, Wikipedia, it's there. Yeah. It's really there. Yes?
Now the students have experienced this fascinating way of learning under their studies and are well educated and are moving to some company where everything is confidential. And is there any way how you can transfer this open-minded approach to the commercial world?
Okay. First, let me answer the commercial thing. One thing we find out very interesting now, this is the 4th, 5th year now, companies start to send us requests to focus recruitment specifically on this kind of student. That's interesting. If you are a company recruiter, you want an interest in this kind of student, right? The open-minded here, I don't know the answer. I don't have the solution for that. But one thing we find very interesting is the personal friendship that's been developed in the class. That, I think, influences a lot. Now, just give you some evidence. The class between Taiwan and China, we're running 4th year now. There are 2 couples are getting married. Now, I'm not running the agency, but there are 2 couples getting married, okay? So the personal networking is amazing. Now, how does that translate into open-mindedness? I don't know. I really don't know. But companies need that. They know they need that. They know they need that. Again, to follow the previous question, the chips are falling. I don't know a lot of where it landed. I don't know. But I'm glad the chip is falling. OK? Yes?
Fantastic lecture. And just great to hear. Is there anyone else other than USC that's running iPodia? Besides your network of the international universities?
Yes, yes.
One of the other universities.
Okay, good, good. This is our strategy. We want to run these things like a hub for a few years to learn how to run it, to learn how to operate it. Once it's successful, we will then let the world replicate, become web. If you really want to change the world like this, you have to really do it like a web. But so far, we're running a hub. Therefore, if DTU want to be a member, you have to apply, and we have to somehow control. The reason is we are still doing a lot of experiment. So to answer your question, no, we are now running this as the hub, the unique hub.
So you guys are the only one that are running.
There are some small activity. For example, I know in New York, they have 3 or 4 community college in one state. But their purpose is different. Their purpose is really try to lower the cost. So they have one teacher give lecture mostly. Most of them still lecturing. So the answer to the question is no. But we are now still in the mode of being a hub. So that when the things is ready, everybody can replicate.
You kind of answered my follow-up question now, and that was if somebody in DTU, now I'm not a teacher, but if somebody were interested, they would then need to apply.
Yes, they need to apply to get into the consortium. I don't see any problem, but we now have an organization need to evaluate that. And the reason is, if you think about it, this is not just 2 presidents sitting together signing a piece of paper, because you're putting your student together. I mean, this is a very serious thing, right? Yes?
Yeah, I guess you still have to keep your business model in making, I mean, it should, you cannot dilute this probably to be including everybody. I mean,
Correct.
it could be fantastic if it was possible, but I mean, each university still has to keep its business model.
Oh, definitely. That's why we try to change the university model inside and try to do very gradually. We don't talk about revenue. We don't talk about branding. We don't talk about degrees. We try to avoid all this hot problem. But the change will happen inside. Okay? And once it happens, you see, I have to tell you the personal story. 5 years ago when I started doing this, nobody believed me. University don't want to pay for it. I have to go to my personal friend. I raised $1 million to do it, first 2 years. Okay? And now, everybody believe want to do it, and I stop my money, you pay for it. Now everybody pay for it. It's hard, but it's happening. Yes?
Yeah, I think it's the last question. So if there are any more questions, take it at the standing on.
Last question?
Just
yes.
a quick comment on that. Well, actually, with the whole flipped classroom thing, and I'm going to say that also tremendously interesting. Actually, one business model is that you can buy video modules from other universities.
Yes.
So if I'm giving a
yes.
e-learning course, I might as well take something from Stanford and something
yes.
from UC and something.
Yes. Your question really point out, really there's a lot of things we don't know how it works today. The only thing we're sure is the ground's shaking. We just don't know how it's going to fall out. But it is not useful anymore if we keep rearranging the deck chair. That's my message. Thank you.